my water just broke. I felt like things really intensified.
She was right there and she was coming.
It was an amazing feeling.
I'm gonna cry just thinking about it. I could feel her head.
We heard her cry. We were squeezing hands and she was screaming.
I'm Bryn Hunt-Palmer, and you're listening to The Birth Hour. This podcast is designed as a safe place for women to come together to share their childbirth stories. Stick around and join us to hear informative and empowering birth journeys from women all over the world. Today's episode is sponsored by Creighton Kids. Creighton Kids understands the joys, surprises, and challenges that come with having a baby. That's why their warm and modern designs are made just for your growing family while also allowing you to keep your sense of style. You can use the code THEBIRTHHOUR10 at checkout to receive 10% off your full price purchase of kids' furniture and accessories at CreightonKids.com. It's valid online only and some exclusions apply, so see their website for details. Again, the code is THEBIRTHHOUR10. At the end of this episode, I'll be talking about baby and toddler toys that look good and stimulate growth and education with Creighton Kids' very own Jamie Sulzer, merchandise buyer for toys and accessories. Today's episode is with Bree, and it's a home birth story in Hawaii. Hi, Bree. Welcome to the Birth Hour. Thanks for coming on the podcast today.
Thank you for having me.
Can you tell listeners a little bit about you and your family?
Yeah, so me and my husband, we live on Oahu. We met here on the island, and that was back in 2012. We got married in 2015. We've just stayed here. We spend our time in California for the summer times, not this year, obviously, because of coronavirus, but I grew up in California. My husband was born in Holland, moved to America when he was 6. And his mom is Tongan, so he's half Dutch, half Tongan. I am just Californian, American, European mutt. But yeah, we like to surf. I am a yoga teacher and also a full-time artist for galleries around the island and Japan. And that's my main job. My husband, he has some creative projects in the works, but he mostly is my main assistant in the art business. So we work together here in Hawaii. My studio is below us in our basement. And that's kind of it.
Awesome. Okay, so let's start with your pregnancy and how that went for you.
So I got pregnant. We had just moved into our new place here in Hawaii. Previously, we had been in a small home, and with the painting I do, it's not super baby friendly. It has a lot of toxic smells to it that I wear a mask. So our goal was to get pregnant after we moved out of a smaller place. That way I could put my studio separately from the house. And we were really lucky to get pregnant on our first try. So that was back in end of October of last year. And then, I was just pregnant, really excited. I would check my phone apps every day to see the baby growing. And we announced to our families over Christmas time, and that was really exciting. And my sister, she's done 3 home births, and that was kind of always my plan. And I can talk about the background to why I wanted a home birth later. But before I even announced to my family, I pulled her aside separately and kind of asked her if she would be my doula. And we had this emotional, exciting hurrah together that she would come to Hawaii from California and be my doula and support me in that home birth experience. So that was really a memorable experience of my pregnancy. Then, actually, what's funny is the moment Bobby and I did the deed to get pregnant, my mom calls me and she's like, "Guess what, Bree?" And I'm like, "What?" And she's like, "So Dad and I want to take all of the siblings. Everyone's going to leave their kids at home. We're all going to take you to Europe in May." And I'm doing the math. I'm like, okay, if we just got pregnant, I will be in my 3rd trimester walking around Europe.
Oh my gosh.
So I was like, oh, yay. But I obviously had to keep it secret because I didn't even know if I did get pregnant. So I do get pregnant, and that's in our plans, was to go to Sweden and Italy and Rome all in the month of May. And everyone was saying, oh, it's fine. Like, you just get to eat more food and you'll be a little uncomfortable, but on your feet, it's not going to be bad. And so we were all excited for that. And it was kind of like one big family hurrah. And then in March, coronavirus hit. So we were obviously going to be visiting the hardest hit countries at the time. So we canceled those plans. And my pregnancy was just all in Hawaii. Didn't travel like we planned, didn't go see family in California or my husband's family in Las Vegas. And it was a pretty lonely pregnancy starting from my second trimester on, because that's when coronavirus hit for me. It was the first trimester. I didn't really tell anybody, so my friends didn't really know. I didn't announce on social media until like 20 weeks, and that was like the week coronavirus hit. I remember just being really lonely, that I couldn't bond with anybody, especially in the beginning. My husband and I were really, really cautious. We still are. We just didn't know the effects it could have on a pregnant person. Yeah, we laid low. I just tried to connect with family over FaceTime and friends over text. And I really struggled with, I wouldn't say like a depression, but I was headed that way pretty quickly when March came around. But one thing that really helped was my husband and I were just surfing a lot out here in Hawaii. That's kind of the main reason we live here, is we just enjoy the surf. I grew up surfing in California, and Hawaii has like the best waves. So I could still surf if I like paddled on my chest more. Sometimes I'd knee paddle, but I felt like the baby would kind of sink to the back of my body and allow me to paddle on my stomach. And I have photos of me later in my pregnancy where my butt's like fully in the air and I look like I don't know how to paddle, but I'm really just taking the weight off the baby. So that kind of helped my sanity for a while. I was surfing, doing yoga and Pilates. That really helped. And I was doing Pilates more for the postpartum. I wanted to be able to repair everything afterwards. And that was just preparation. 35 weeks hit, and prodromal labor started. It actually started after a surf session, and I was like, oh no, I just started my labor. Like, that was bad. I shouldn't have surfed. And I was like crying, and I was like, this baby's going to come too soon. That was my fault. Why am I so selfish for surfing? And then it petered out at like 2 a.m. And yeah, I should also mention my midwife is here on the North Shore. She lives about 5 minutes away from me. She was amazing. I met her at 9 weeks pregnant, and I can just text her whenever I have questions or calls. And for our appointments, our prenatals, she actually gives me a full body massage every single appointment, or she did when I was pregnant. And so our appointments were about once a week, and those were really, really helpful for me. I'm a sexual assault survivor, and I was raped when I was 18. And so a huge reason I wanted a home birth was I wanted full body autonomy when I was giving birth. So in a hospital setting, I couldn't imagine that with nurses and doctors with their hands on me. I just would feel really triggered. Even just thinking about it makes me feel super triggered and gives me so much anxiety. So having her giving me these massages once a session, prenatal appointment, was really, really comforting, because I got to know her touch. I got to get comfortable with her. And sometimes they would turn into like therapy sessions. We'd be just talking and I'd be venting or whatever it was. And she really became a good friend throughout all these appointments to me. And I created a really strong personal connection with her. So that's kind of my biggest reason for doing my home birth.
Mm-hmm. I love that she did the massages too. I feel like every midwife should do that.
I know, right? And yeah, and she's like a trained masseuse, and I was like, I want to just shout it from the rooftops, like that she's like the most amazing midwife to walk this earth. But
that's
yeah,
best.
I wish everyone could experience that. And I've even gifted some of my friends that had babies massages from her, just to feel her touch, and just to see how amazing she is, but also how healing that can be in whatever phase of your pregnancy or postpartum experience you're in. Mm-hmm. So those changed to about once a week. When I hit 35 weeks, she did a birth class with me and my husband in our home. So those massages were obviously so needed. The later I was getting into my pregnancy, and this prodromal labor was throwing my back for a huge loop. And I mentally had to be really strong. Like, these contractions are probably super minor, and they're just false labor. But how am I going to do this when the real thing happens? And slowly they'd happen every like 3 or 4 days. I could kind of mentally like put them aside and ignore them. And I felt like I could do the labor. But a lot of people were telling me, oh, I had prodromal labor and my labor only lasted 3 hours. Or my midwife would say, like, yeah, sometimes people have really quick labors when they have all this false labor. And in my mind, I was like, sweet, I'm going to have a short labor. So we can get into my actual birth.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was kind of a long pregnancy talk.
So you mentioned the prodromal labor. Was that like going on? How long did that last for you after it started while you were surfing?
The first time it probably lasted like 7 hours.
Okay.
And they didn't do the whole like 5 minutes apart and then 3 minutes apart. They were like 2 minutes apart, 1 minute long from the get-go. So that's why we thought
for 7 hours.
This is weird. Yeah.
Wow.
For a long time. And so I was like trying to get comfortable on the birth ball and just try to find areas in my house that I was comfortable. Mm-hmm. So in that aspect, it really helped me find my coping areas and what I wanted. But it was just very strange because as a first-time mom, I guess anytime you're in labor or think you're in labor, you're like, okay, is the baby like coming out in like a minute or so? Like, I have no clue like what the feeling I should be feeling is, So my midwife was coming up and doing checks and seeing the contractions. And she's like, this is so weird. Like, these are intense, but I don't know. So we kind of chalked it up to my body's just really sensitive. And we had 5 weeks of that every like 4 days. So the first like week or two, my midwife was kind of on edge the whole time. Mm-hmm. And then after that, she's like, let's just don't even call me until you're in like pushing phase, like until you really feel like the push, or like we see your bloody show, or there's something that will be different than what you're experiencing. And I'm like, yeah, that's fine. So I kind of we just went on with our normal appointments, and we would talk about it. But she was like, I think you're just really sensitive. Like, your body is just extra, extra sensitive. And I agree. I think it shows up in my labor too, how like sensitive I really am, and probably how little my pain tolerance really is. But yeah.
All right. So then what was it that made you kind of realize that this was different this time when it actually started?
So it was, my due date was on a Sunday. And this was about 2 weeks ago. My baby's 2 weeks old now. On Thursday, the week before, I just kind of was telling my midwife, like, can we do a membrane sweep? Can we just do anything that like gets this baby out of me? I was so over the prodromal labor, and I was still seeing an OB on the side. So I even asked her for a membrane sweep. And granted, when I started the prodromal labor at 35 weeks, I was sitting at like a 1.5 centimeters, and I was still 1.5 when I went to the OB for my last appointment. And she couldn't sweep me because my cervix was too posterior, and I was still 1.5. She's like, yeah, I can't, you're not even in a position to sweep. So for my midwife, I'm like, okay, what else can I do? And she's like, try acupuncture. So Thursday, I set up an acupuncture appointment. The lady texts me her address, and she lives like 5 minutes away from me. So I just walk over there Thursday afternoon. And I'm just hoping that after I do the acupuncture, I'm walking home and my water will break. But that didn't happen. So she does all these points to me. She even puts little magnets on my ears. I guess there's little spots on the earlobe that mimic the womb and the uterus. And so she does that, and I go home, and she says she's barely ever had a person not go into labor within 24 hours. So I'm kind of on watch. But then 24 hours later is Friday afternoon, and I don't feel labor coming on. But that Friday night, I started to like feel just mentally different. But I didn't want to get my hopes up, because I was like, okay, I'm going to be pregnant until August. So I'm just going to like act like this isn't happening. But then Saturday morning, I woke up like, okay, I think today I'm going into labor. And I don't even know how to explain it, but I wanted to like push it further if that's the truth. And so I did acupressure on myself. There's spots, it's like 4 fingers above your ankle, 4 fingers below your knee, and then the space in between your thumb and index finger. And so I would just press my thumb in those spots for like 2 minutes at a time, switching legs, switching hands. And I did that for about 20 minutes. And that was at like 8 a.m. Saturday morning. And then 1 p.m., I could start to feel the contractions. And before that, they were kind of doing that prodromal, like easing in, easing out. And I was like, okay, this is still false. But then 1 p.m. hit and I was like, okay, this is the real deal. Me and my husband were intimate because I was like, let's just, if this is the real deal or if this is false labor, I want to push my body into the real deal. So we did that. And about 1:30, he went to go grab us lunch. He came back and I was just like moaning. I was like, I couldn't even eat my meal. I was like taking breaks and I was like, this is not false labor. This is feeling really different. This is getting really intense really fast. So I just started tracking, had my bloody show at 4 p.m. and texted my midwife that. And she was like, okay, let's just see, like, if you start to feel pushy, let me know. But your bloody show could also mean you're going to have labor in 2 days or give birth in 3 days. And I was like, oh my gosh, don't tell me that. So let's see. I tell my husband to blow up the tub. That's at like 6 p.m. And I start doing the mile circuit. Have you heard of the mile circuit?
Yeah. Is that on Spinning Baby's website?
I think so.
Go ahead and describe it though for people who don't know.
Okay. So it's like 3 different exercises. It takes about an hour and a half to do. And the first one, you're sticking your butt up in the air, kind of like a child, like a puppy dog pose in yoga, or child's pose with your butt even higher. You do that for 30 minutes. And then you do this like side lying on your stomach, propped up with pillows for 30 minutes. And then you do like stair walking or lunges for 30 minutes. And I guess that helps the baby get into position if you're already in labor, or it helps you get into labor. Mm-hmm. So since I was already in labor, I was like, maybe this will just help progress me a little farther. And so I'm doing that while he's getting the tub ready, and it's like beautiful sunset time in our house. And I was just like so excited, like, oh my gosh, I think I'm going to make the baby tonight. And my midwife comes over at like, I think like 8 o'clock is when my contractions really ramped up, where I was like, I'm getting in the tub. I need some relief. Texted my sister to come up to the house. The midwife comes at like 9 or 10 and she checks me and she's like, you're out of 2. And I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? Like I was at a 1.5 for 5 weeks and now I'm only out of 2. And I feel like I've been in labor or early labor for 7 hours. And her and my sister are both tracking my contractions, and they're short. They're like 2 minutes in between, a minute long, a minute 15 seconds long. And they're both saying like, it looks like she's in active labor. It looks like she's in a lot of pain. And they're like, yeah, this is so weird. And I think that is just my sensitivity, like to the experience. I practiced hypnobirthing leading up to my labor, and I was trying to do that. So they leave, I think around like 11, and my midwife is like, go get some rest, go sleep through the night. And she's telling my husband like, she could be at a 2 for the next couple days. And my husband told me after the fact that he's like, maybe we will go to the hospital. Like if she's in this much pain, she needs to get some relief if this is going to be another 2 days of this. But I laid down and I like popped right back up from the bed. I was like, I can't lay here. These contractions really, really suck. And, I get back in the tub, and this is where I wish I didn't text anybody. I wish I just like sat there in my contractions and just was in my contractions by myself. Because I think this is where I started to progress, was just being by myself. And I don't know if that's just the pressure from other people being around me, but I labored by myself from like 11 to like 2 in the morning. And I was just in the tub. I would go to the bathroom and get an R shower. And I really enjoyed it. I actually watched like TikTok videos to laugh through my contractions, which really helped. But then they were starting to double peak.
Can you explain what that means to people who don't know?
So the contraction would start and I would kind of ignore the start of them. I could feel them coming on, but then they would peak really hard. And that's when, you know, you feel like the height of your contraction. Mm-hmm. And then it would start to go away and I would mentally be like, okay, I can, you know, I'll take a rest now. But then the second I would think that, it would go back up to the peak. Mm-hmm. And I was like, what? This is not what I'm used to.
Yeah, so you just don't get a break at all.
Yeah, no break. I was like, is the baby arriving? Am I in transition? So I texted my midwife that, and she's like, oh no, like that doesn't sound good. Let me sit with this for a second. So I explained everything that she wanted over the phone. She hung up and then she texted me like 5 minutes later and she's like, okay, I just kind of meditated on this and I'm going to come back up and hang out with you. And I'll explain everything when I get there. So I wasn't worried because I was so mentally like far off from thinking anything was wrong. When she got there, she was like, okay, like, I just want to see if there's extra blood that's not just coming from you dilating. Cause I was bleeding on and off every time I would stand up. And she was like, we just want to make sure it's not a placental abruption because I guess that can happen. It's double peaking. And that would mean I'd transfer to the hospital. And so I'm in the bathtub, our bathroom bathtub, not the tub. So she could see everything. And she's like, okay, I don't think that you have a placental abruption, but this is really weird. Like, and she's seeing that they're double peaking. She's timing them on her watch. And we're just sitting in kind of silence while I go through like 10 contractions. She's like, I'm just going to hang out with you. So she's like, I go back into the big tub. She's kind of sleeping on my couch, dozing on and off. But she checks me before she falls asleep. It's like 2 a.m. and I'm at a 4. So I was like, okay, I did progress while I was by myself. And that's kind of where I wish I just kind of breathed through the double contractions. Obviously hindsight's 2020, but I think I could have kept progressing if there was nobody watching me and I was able to just labor on my own. Because she checks me at 6 a.m. and I'm still at a 4. And I was like, oh my gosh. She's like, you've probably just been in the tub for too long. I'd been in the tub that whole time. My husband was awake now, feeding me or trying to, and rubbing my back. And she's like, I'm going to go home, get some rest, get some breakfast. I want you to go for a walk on the beach and maybe jump in the ocean. I want you to just change things up. I think you've just been in the tub for too long. And so she leaves, we get dressed. It's like maybe 7 a.m. now. We let my sister know, okay, we'll meet you at the beach because the house she was staying at was closer to the ocean. And we like open the front door to leave our house and all the steam just like leaves the house. I was like, oh my gosh, Bobby, I'm so sorry. Have you just been sitting in like this hot steam room of a house for like all night long? He's like, yeah, it's pretty hot because they were boiling water all night for the tub. I didn't even notice the temperature changed. So we get outside. I'm like, this feels really nice. We get in the car and I'm like, this sucks. I'm not liking this. So if I have to transfer to the hospital, like there's no way I could sit in the car because our hospital is about an hour and 15 minutes away. We get to we park at the beach and I can take like 10 steps before a contraction. They're just so on top of each other. I'm walking slow. And once we get to the beach, I have this like goal to get to another beach, like maybe 200 yards away. I'm like, okay, let's walk to the end and back. She wants us to walk for like 45 minutes, an hour. And we make it probably like a third of the way there before it's already been 30 minutes of a walk. So it was a really, really slow walk and lots of contractions. My sister meets us halfway and I'm like, okay, we're turning around now. Like, I want to go home and get in the tub. I am in so much pain. And she's like, why don't you just try the ocean? I was like, yeah, you're right. Like, I'm hot. I need to get some relief. So I kind of take off my shawl that I was wearing and I waddle into the ocean. And my husband's just standing at like the shoreline, just ready to like jump in and save me. I think he looked really apprehensive. And so I'm like kind of ducking under some waves and I can't even like be underwater fully submerged because my breath is so shallow because of the contractions. And so I just kind of keep my head over the water and I'm letting the weight lift off my stomach. And that feels amazing. And I think that's where a huge perspective shift happened for me, because I got out of the water and I could walk faster. I was like, I feel like that just kind of re-energized everything, kind of washed away the past labor that I was experiencing. And I was probably only in the water for like 5 minutes, but I was like, this feels awesome. I can do the rest of this day. Like, it's Sunday now, and I'm going to have this baby on July 19th. We were walking back to the car, and I threw up my dinner, which was just vegetables. And my sister's like, that's good. Throwing up is good. That means the baby's coming. I'm like, okay, shut up. Like, I don't feel good. And so they were like, you need to eat though. Like, there's nothing in you right now. So I'm giving coconut water and an RX bar, and I'm eating that on the way home. My sister's in the car with us, and it's just kind of quiet. We get home, and she sends my husband to bed. He's like been awake for so long, and he goes and takes like a 5-hour nap, probably only like 3 hours, but it felt like a long time. And she's like, your midwife wants me and you to just hang out. If your contractions stall, we're going to go for a walk around the neighborhood or just around the house. And I was like, okay. So we were on the couch, and I just want to like lay down and kind of get some rest. So we're watching Bridesmaids, because I'm like, it's funny. Maybe I can like laugh through some contractions. And there was only like one scene that I could really laugh through, but it was a nice change of pace, and she'd never seen the movie before, so I thought it was fun. So we get mostly through the movie until I'm like turning it off. I can't even listen to it anymore. The contractions are just so much. And she's like, well, they've slowed down. Let's go for a walk. And anytime I was with her, she made me squat between contractions. And so she would stand behind me and just hold my under my arms, and I would just try to squat as low as I could through the contractions. And as we're leaving the house to go for our walk, by the door was like kind of my birth altar, where I had my essential oils and candles, and then I had these affirmation cards that all of my friends wrote to me during my baby shower, and I hadn't read them yet. And she's like, oh, let me read them to you while we're walking around the house. And that was like a really spiritual experience for me, because just some of those cards were really, really close friends have also experienced home birth. And one in particular, they just made both of me and my sister cry. And it was so uplifting and exciting to read those words, or to hear those words being read. And we were walking around in our around my house, where it's all jungly, and it was just very amazing. We are done with the cards, and we walk through the neighborhood. I'm squatting, and cars are driving through our neighborhood, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not even wearing a bra in my robe. And so I'm trying to like cover up and go through contractions as people are driving by, and they're like people I know. So I'm like waving to them. And I was like, I want to get home. And she's like, okay, just walk to the stop sign and back. And I'm like, I'm going to kill you. Like, let me go home. So we get home, my midwife shows up, and I'm like, in my head, I was like, if she tells me I'm still at a 4, we're going to the birth center. I don't care. I want to just get an epidural and have this baby right now. So she comes, and she's doing my blood pressure. She checks the baby's heart rate, and I'm squatting against the ball on the floor in my living room, and she's sitting on my couch. And I know it's like this quiet air between us, like, okay, are you going to check me or should you not? And she didn't mention anything. And I was right about to ask her, like, okay, should you check me? And my water breaks. And it was like the best thing ever. My husband had just woken up. He was doing some laundry to wash the towels. So he was downstairs in the laundry room while that happened. And I like hop in the shower because I wanted to wash everything away. And he comes back up, and Elise, and my midwife, Elise is my sister, she was like, oh, her water just broke. And he like comes to the shower, and I'm like smiling. I'm like so happy. Like, this means it's happening. Like, this is the real deal. And I was like, I can do this. And I was just so excited. So that was about 11 o'clock in the morning, or I think it was noon. It was noon. And my midwife is kind of starting to prep, and just seeing her starting to get things out, I was like, okay, this is good news. And she's like, so I leave the shower, and I'm like walking to the tub, all excited. She's like, no, don't get in the tub. Like, this is a good thing. Like, let's keep you moving and walking, and get on the birth stool, walk around the tub. Like, let's just keep everything in place for this labor to progress. And I was like, okay, that sucks. And so I'm kind of moving. I get in the tub every like probably 6 contractions just for one contraction. And she's like, okay, time to get out. And so obviously it's that like telltale home birth story where you just want the tub so bad. It's like your best friend, but it's not really when it comes to getting your labor all the way to transition. They think I was starting to go through transition around like 1:30, 2 p.m. And I could kind of feel it because I remember bracing myself on the side of the tub. I'm standing there and I was moaning through all my contractions, like the whole entire labor. But then all of a sudden my moans went from like a moan to like oh my gosh, I think I'm pushing. And it felt like as if you're throwing up, but the opposite direction. That same, just all those muscles you don't have control over, everything just starts to like clench, and it's like something wants to eject from you, but you don't really have a choice. It's coming no matter what. So I was like, oh, I feel super pushy. Mind you, I hadn't been checked since like 6 a.m. I was at a 4 at the time, but I wasn't going to get checked at all. I was also group B positive or strep B positive. So once my water breaks, no checks are happening. And this baby should come out within like 18 hours or else we're going to the hospital for antibiotics. So I check myself in the tub and I'm hoping to feel a head and I don't. So I'm like, okay, why am I feeling this pushing sensation? And she's like, I think just the baby's so far back is super posterior that your cervix is trying to push it all forward so the baby gets into a better spot. Let's go lay on your bed and I'm going to massage you. So she has me side lying with my leg on a pillow, my left leg, laying on my right side. And she just massages my lower back over and over again. And she's kind of going down my back and then to my hip. And as she's doing that, I can probably about 20 contractions. I can kind of sleep in between them, but I can also kind of feel a shift in my stomach. Like my stomach starts to feel a little different. And that was my midwife's way of coaxing the baby forward a bit. So we do that. Then there was one contraction while I was laying on the bed that I just jumped up. I was like, I can't, this hurts too much now. I need to get back in the tub. And I'm doing the grunting, pushing sound. Like I really can't control this. And that's kind of what I wanted all along, was the fetal ejection reflex to happen. I just didn't think it would happen a full like hour before the baby would arrive. And so around 2:45, I'm in the shower and our tub is like this small square and I'm on my hands and knees and I can kind of push my legs apart. So my knees are pressing against the edges of the tub and that feels really good to like push that way. And my midwife recommends all these different positions. We're trying to get the baby forward. And my sister comes in and she's like, with my first baby, I had to get in the tub and my husband got behind me in the tub and held my legs and I pushed against his hands and we kind of did it together and I pushed the baby out. Why don't we try that? And my midwife thought that's a really good idea. You can kind of curl over your stomach, kind of crunch the baby out. And I was like, that's awesome. Let's try that. And my husband was not going to get in the tub. He was, for like months leading up to the birth, people would ask him, he's like, there's no way. But at that moment, he like didn't even hesitate. He just got in the tub. He was like, he could see how much pain I was in, but also like how close we were to meeting our baby. And, by the way, our baby was a surprise gender and my family makes big babies. So my midwife had that in the back of her head, like shoulder dystocia is a risk and we just don't know how big this baby was. At 32 weeks, my ultrasound was saying that the baby was already 5 pounds. So it was projected between 9 and 10 pounds at the due date. And so we got in the tub and I have it filmed and I rewatched it just before this podcast interview. And I just, right when I get in the tub and lay against my husband, I was like, oh, this feels really nice. Like this is the best. And I think just that physical touch was really, really nice to feel after so many hours of just being in my own zone. And so I thought I was pushing for about an hour, but I was only pushing for about like 28 minutes and from getting in the tub with my husband till Lottie was born. And every time a contraction came and I was pushing and pushing against my husband's hands, I could feel the baby kind of descend, and I could feel myself opening up. I didn't really feel the ring of fire until maybe like the fourth contraction. And I remember telling my sister and midwife, like, I feel the ring of fire. And afterwards they told me the baby's head was only like a third of the way out, because they were like, oh, cool, good job. Like, but really they were like, you don't know what you're about to feel, because I wasn't fully there yet. And so I could feel the baby's head moving in and out through every push. And every time it would suck back in, I knew that was good because that was helping me not tear. But at the same time, I had felt like I was been pushing for like hours and hours, that I was just like, I don't even care if I tear. I want to push this baby out right away. So there was a point that I could feel myself starting to tear, but the baby's head was like, that was a real ring of fire. And I felt it suck in a little bit, but I was like, in my head, I was like, it doesn't even matter. I'm just going to count to 10 in my head and just keep pushing. And that's when I felt the tear down below in the perineum, but her head was out. And so her head was born in the water, and then my midwife wanted me to stand and have gravity pull the rest of the baby out. And so I stood up. My husband's hands are just like below the head. They can see everything. And I could just hear them saying like, oh, Bree, she's so pretty. Like, or they didn't know it was a boy or girl, but they were like, your baby's here and so cute, like so chubby, like keep going. And the next contraction, I like barely had to push. I do remember having to feel that push of the shoulders. Her chin was kind of stuck too. And she just kind of came like sliding out, that my husband, he's like, I didn't even know what to expect. So I kind of just saw this like white body slither out, and he kind of caught her, but didn't really, and pulled her up, and she was just really calm. I turn around, we're both in the tub, and I'm just like talking to this baby, and my voice is like gone from all the screaming and yelling I was doing. And she just kind of opens her eyes up to my husband, and it's just really calm. And I'm just happy, that full birth high that you get right when you deliver the baby. I totally felt that. It felt amazing. And I didn't even care about that pain. And 30 minutes before, I was telling everyone, okay, I need a C-section. I think I need an ambulance. Like, can someone just get me morphine? Like, is there a way to get morphine? And then like 30 minutes later, she's out, and I'm like telling everyone, that was so worth it. I could totally do that again. I want another home birth. Like, it's just so funny how that happens. And so my husband's holding her. I'm still kind of in shock. My husband said I was talking a lot, and obviously I just do that when I'm excited. And we didn't know the gender. And so maybe like 4 or 5 minutes later, I was like, what is it, boy or girl? And he's like, it's a girl. And I was like, oh my gosh. Like, I had my favorite name picked out. So I was like, is it a little Lottie? He's like, we'll talk about that later. I was like, okay. And then I hold her. She hadn't cried yet. So I was like, didn't know if she was okay, but she was pinking up just fine. And when I asked my midwife, she's like, she's fine. Like, I don't even think they suctioned anything out of her nose. I kind of put my mouth on her nose and sucked some out just because I felt the need to do that. And I was able to spit some stuff out. I don't know what that was, but she was fine. And we kind of just sat in the tub together as like a new family for, I don't know, 5 or 10 minutes. And then I stood up to get out of the tub, still holding Lottie, and I felt another contraction, and I was like, damn you, I hate these things. Like, I want you guys to go away. And she had me sit on the birth stool, and like before I could even sit down and before she could even get like the full pan underneath me, the placenta just like plopped out. So I'm really grateful that all came out. And then, yeah, we just kind of were on the couch after the baby was born. She was doing some checks. I did have a 2nd-degree tear. And as she was in there kind of like picking out the clots, just like the extra stuff, she said, she's like, I can stitch you if you want. It's a 2nd-degree tear. Like, we do stitch these, but there's also midwives that don't stitch these. They can heal on their own if you're careful in your recovery time. And I was like, yeah, I'm done having pain. Like, can we just stop everything? And I remember even when she was down there examining me, I had to hand the baby over to my husband because I had to like brace myself on the couch. I was just like, I'm done, no stitching if we can. And so we haven't stitched, and I've actually healed up really well. It's like 98% sealed, and I'm 2 weeks postpartum. So I'm grateful I didn't get the stitching. And she said, if anything, it just might help the next baby come out a little easier. But yeah, it was a pretty amazing experience. So I think it was 15 hours all in all labor, from the time my water broke, about 3.5 hours till she was born.
Yeah. Well, you're still just 2 weeks in. So is there anything from your postpartum so far that you want to share?
I would say that everyone kind of, like, I was given a bunch of diapers for the postpartum experience. So I thought I was supposed to like wear diapers and pack the pads with like all the witch hazel and stuff for a week afterwards. And I really should have only been doing that. I probably did that for 4 or 5 days. And once I switched into just normal postpartum underwear, like that Thinx brand, I just have like my period underwear from before I was pregnant. Once I switched into that, I started healing so much faster. I think just the thickness of the diaper and like all of that stuff in there. I mean, it's definitely healing, but I don't think it like helped my legs stay together, or I don't know, maybe it was just too coarse of material for me. But once I switched into just normal underwear and a thin pad, I was in heaven after that. So for some people that might work, and others it might not, but I wish I switched out of diapers from like day 3. I probably could have been done with those. And even my midwife was like, oh yeah, you don't have to be wearing those anymore. I'm like, okay, I'm done. And this is also probably a weird tip, but because I didn't get stitches, I bet a lot of women do this, is they air out everything. So I would take off my underwear once or twice a day and just kind of air everything out. And I was telling my sister about this, and she was like, add a heat source to your airing out time. So I started using a blow dryer down there. And I think that's really what sealed up my tear really quickly. It was just taking all the moisture out of that area, adding some heat, drying it all up. I think it helped the whole process. And once I started doing that, everything felt 10 times better. I stopped bleeding at like 11 days postpartum. And so now it's just kind of like a really, really light pink blood discharge. That's been nice because I thought I was just going to bleed forever. But yeah, the postpartum experience is gnarlier than I expected. Just because I'm someone that is more independent and I want to be able to like help my baby. If my baby's crying, I want to be able to go grab her and change her diaper myself and pick her up. And especially the first week, my midwife is like, nothing, your husband does everything for you. He gets your water. You don't walk, you don't leave this room. You walk to the bathroom and back. And she wants me home for a full month, keeping my legs together, barely walking. And it's so true. The days that I don't leave my bed and only leave my bed to either shower or go to the bathroom are the days I feel the most healed. And the days that I try to do more and walk around more, I'm set back like 2 days. So for all moms, take your time to just absorb the newborn phase, just love and snuggle your baby, and then have everyone else cater to you. Even though it's hard for me, but it really does help with your healing. And the faster you heal, the faster you can get to your baby after the fact, So, yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely really good advice. Well, are there any resources you want to share that you haven't mentioned?
There's this group in Hawaii called How to Thrive Postpartum. It's just a website, and it's just this amazing group of women. I think one's in Colorado and one's in Hawaii, and they made this postpartum course, and it's full of lactation counselors, psychologists, pelvic floor specialists, and it just dives really deep into like all aspects of your postpartum life. And that has been really helpful. I did the course before I gave birth, obviously, because I didn't want to deal with it afterwards, but I can still go back and check in on it once I kind of feel better to get back on the computer and stuff. But I think it really helped. There were some things that were said in like the breastfeeding experience that helped me, and my baby and I have a really, really great breastfeeding relationship. So I think just any tools you can take while you're pregnant to work on your postpartum. We're so absorbed in our pregnancy to worry about our pregnancy and the baby that's inside of us that we kind of forget to study up on the postpartum experience and what to expect. And I think around, your last couple of weeks of your pregnancy to really try to dive deeper into that so that you feel a little bit more prepared.
Yeah, definitely that. And baby care, if you don't know anything about that. Yeah, I feel like we always read all the pregnancy books and it's like, wait, what about parenting this little thing?
I know, right? It's like the second that everyone left our house, packed up all the home birth, the tub and everything, I was like, wait, you guys are leaving just me and Bobby in the care of this little tiny being. And of course we didn't sleep the first couple nights because we just had our hand on her stomach, but yeah.
All right. Well, we'll link to that on the show notes page. And then did you want to share where people can connect with you?
I'm just on Instagram. My Instagram is at justbree, JUSTBREE. And that's kind of where I share lifestyle stuff, my artwork, and starting to share more about the experience I had and now our little baby girl.
All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing today. I really appreciate you coming on.
Thanks, Bryn.
Now I'm going to talk with Jamie from Creighton Kids, today's sponsor.
Hi, Jamie. Thank you so much for coming on the Birth Hour today to chat with me a little bit about Creighton Kids.
Thank you for having me.
Can you tell my listeners a little bit about who you are and what you do over at Creighton Kids?
Yeah, so I have the most fun job in the world. I'm the buyer for toys and kids' lighting and org and wall decor.
Oh my gosh, that sounds like the best job. I feel like with all the time I'm spending at home lately, I've been really thinking a lot more about sprucing up the walls and stuff. So I'm excited to hear what you have to say. But today we're focusing on kind of blending in toys that are beautiful but also really functional. And so many of us don't really have a dedicated playroom. And so I'd love to hear your thoughts on creating a space that can be a play space for the kids as well as a living room space for the grown-ups. What advice do you have for us?
Yeah, so I have 2 kids of my own, so I'm very familiar with, when kids become a part of your family, you really want to incorporate them into your world, and you don't want to necessarily separate them off, separate their play spaces off. And a lot of us don't have the luxury of that additional space. So, we're really big fans at Creighton Kids on incorporating the toys into the rest of the living space. And there are great ways to do that without the toys kind of taking over. So at Creighton Kids, we have these great storage baskets that also look great in your living room or in your dining room or wherever you want to incorporate your kids' play spaces into your living space. And they're super easy when your kid is done playing to pick it up and just put it away, and it coordinates with the rest of your decor so it's not kind of an eyesore that you're staring at when you're trying to relax in a more grown-up space.
Definitely. Are there any products off the top of your head that are really helpful for achieving this?
Yeah, so we have a really great assortment of what we call floor baskets, and they're just that. They're large size baskets that you can put on the floor, and they're really easy to carry around if you want to take them into a different room. We have a couple that are more neutral, that have a great texture, like our natural rope storage baskets. They're just that, a natural colored rope basket. They can fit into essentially any type of decor, but they're also really neutral and they're kid-friendly materials. They're made out of cotton rope. So, they're not going to break in half if your kid accidentally sits on it or, their fire truck gets stuck in it, which is great. And then we have these super luxurious velvet storage bins that are this beautiful quilted storage that are a little bit richer in color. But again, they have this amazing kid-friendly material, and they camouflage any type of toys that you would fit in there.
Yeah, these types of baskets are like my go-to for quick cleanups too.
Yes.
Because you can just kind of throw everything in there and then it looks like you've tidied up, even though maybe it's like a really random assortment of toys.
Absolutely.
Okay, so for those of us who don't have a playroom, we're not storing all of our toys in, one designated space. Are there any toys that you really feel like mix well into the decor without, throwing them into a basket?
Absolutely. At Creighton Kids, we're very, very fond of classic wooden toys because they have this timeless quality. You can pass them down to generations and they hold up really, really well. But the best thing about them is they look good as decor. And, you're not going to hear like a siren going off because the battery is about to die in a plastic toy. These types of toys are great for imaginary play. You can, for specific items like wooden blocks, you can use them so many different ways. And it's a great opportunity for kids to really use their imagination and, showcase kind of how they can build with these types of things.
Yeah, I love shopping for really beautiful toys myself, and I feel like the open-ended toys actually really do get so much more use by my kids, especially like over the years with multiple kids.
Yeah, it gives them opportunity to really kind of express whatever they're feeling that day and, maybe even go bigger and build bigger or build differently, and it mixes it up so they're not basically playing with the same thing every day.
Definitely. So another great place, obviously, to keep your kids' toys is in their own rooms or in the nursery. Do you have any favorites that are great for using as decor as well?
Yeah. So, the classic etched blocks are amazing as decor as well as have wonderful play value. The etched wooden blocks that we have at Creighton Kids are incredibly neutral. They're just a natural block with white etching. And they're great to hang on a shelf or on top of a dresser. And they're also amazing for kids to play with and stack. And then we also have this large block set that's incredibly colorful. And again, it's just really, really pretty to look at. And both of these things, like you said, they offer so many different types of play value for the kids. And it gives them the opportunity not to get bored with the same toy over and over.
So those are great for keeping like little hands busy in any room and maybe moving them around in a basket or something like that. Do you have any toys or books or other things that would get a lot of use but also be really beautiful to display maybe in a nursery?
Absolutely. We love books, and we love books as display, as decor. They look great on a wall as well as on a table. And who doesn't love to read to their children? And so books are an amazing way to add a little decor and add a little bit of color in your nursery or in your kids' rooms. We also are fans of eco-friendly toys or any sort of wooden toys that offer hours of fun, but also look really beautiful and colorful. We have these large baby stacking rings, which are very traditional in look. You may have seen similar design in plastic, and ours is actually made out of this beautifully stained wood. And this is great for kids. It's very kid-friendly. They can put it in their mouth and it's not going to destroy it. And they also just look really nice on a shelf. And then we also have these natural baby beads. Again, these are great teethers. Kids just love chewing on things when they're little. And so this just gives parents peace of mind because it's made out of a natural material and not plastic. And again, they also just look really, really nice as decor.
All right, what about bigger items? I know there's so many fun things to choose from, but you don't want your house to end up looking like a daycare with like every line having a big item on it. So what are some of the things to take into consideration when choosing maybe a play set or something like that?
Yeah, so especially now that, we're all home, a lot of the time it's really important when the weather's not great outside to give your kids an opportunity to think big when they're playing. And, who doesn't love a play home? The beauty of the play home is that it can be an imaginary play type toy as well as a reading nook or just a place for a child to have some quiet time. But the beauty of the play homes that we carry at Creighton Kids is that we do offer some that are more neutral color palettes. So you can keep them set up in your living spaces and it's not going to be an eyesore that you have to look at every day, because we don't always have the luxury of having a designated space to house our children's toys. So having something that is more neutral, that can stay in your room, is a huge benefit. We have this iCat play home that is very neutral in color, but has great play value. It's like a camping tent, and it has a door so you could lock out your siblings if you want to. But it looks great. So you're not going to get tired of looking at it if it stays built for a long time in your living room. And we also have this beautiful rattan rocking horse that is a great take on the more traditional wooden rocking horse. It's a very natural color palette, very neutral. And this is something that can be passed down to different generations.
Yeah, that rocking horse is so pretty. I wouldn't mind having that in my living room for sure. All right. Well, I love all of those ideas. Is there anything else that you wanted to add, or things that you found really helpful in your own home?
I think the most important thing is kids are part of our lives, and the best way to incorporate them into our homes and into our living spaces is by having toys that they love to play with, as well as toys that we can play with them with. And the added benefit is that they also look good in our home, and it's not something that we feel the need to put away at the end of every play session. And Creighton Kids is very big on natural materials and longevity. We love things to last a long time and to be passed down to future generations. And they're also really great investments, because, your child is going to have different interests as they get older, but some of these toys have different uses as they grow. And it just makes for more longevity in the toy world. You could constantly be buying and replacing toys, but these beautiful wood toys that we have, they last a really long time.
Yeah, there's so much to choose from. And we've talked about so many different, topics on this podcast as far as decor and now toys and storage and all the things. So everybody can head over to CreightonKids.com and check those things out. And we'll link to some of these products that Jamie and I have talked about today. Thank you so much for coming on and chatting with me, Jamie.
Thank you so much. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you so much again to Bree for sharing her birth story with us today, and to Jamie for chatting with me about Creighton Kids. Don't forget, you can use the coupon code TheBirthHour10 for 10% off your purchase at CreightonKids.com. If you want that and any other information from today's episode, just head over to thebirthhour.com and search for Bree's name in the search bar.